Welcome to the Capital News. I am your host, Alex Karitis. Today is December 3rd, 2019. Thank you so much for joining me. Title of today's podcast, Santa Claus Rally or a Stocking Full of Coal. It's very early on in the month of December. One day, 2 days does not make a trend. We've had a bit of a sell-off in the markets. We have the Dow Jones down 1% today. The S&P 500 was down 0.6%. The NASDAQ 100 was down about the same, almost 0.7%. But the Russell 2000 did not sell off as aggressively. It closed down about 0.3% for the day. This is all on the back of the continuation of the now, surprise, surprise, lack of progress on the U.S.-China trade talks. Apparently, there is some escalation underway. We have Congress once again passing legislation that is presumably going to make its way to the Resolute desk at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue for President Donald J. Trump to sign, perhaps in the very near future. And this is in regards to Chinese human rights violations targeting the Uyghurs, or the Uyghurs, whatever it's pronounced, the Muslim sect that is over there in the, I believe, northwest quadrant of China, with the re-education camps, whatever you want to call them. It's not good stuff. There have been some files that have been released. Of course, Western media is saying that this is from an insider within the Chinese Communist Party, because these education or re-education camps, if you will, are only in existence because they were ordered by the highest levels of the government, which would mean President Xi himself. This is not good. However, the Chinese are fighting back, saying this is propaganda. There's no such thing as these re-education camps from how the Western media is focusing this or portraying this as a human rights violation. This is simply, look, we're just trying to incorporate these people into Chinese culture. That's it. Now, if you want to believe that, you're probably going to be a lone man out there, but you're welcome to believe that. I believe this is a human rights violation. I believe it's right for the United States Congress to make a stand. If this makes its way to the president's desk, it will be right of him to sign it, just like he signed the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act just a week ago, a few days ago. China, of course, like we discussed yesterday, was retaliating in regards to, all right, we're not going to allow U.S. Navy ships to port here in Hong Kong Harbor for a little R&R. Not going to happen. We're also going to prohibit or restrict U.S. NGOs, non-governmental organizations, to do work here in Hong Kong, or perhaps even in mainland China. Now they're saying, in regards to this new action that was just undertaken by Congress, that there is going to be further escalation in retaliation, perhaps some sort of quote-unquote blacklist of not allowing certain U.S. individuals or officials to travel to Hong Kong and or China, and of course, who knows what else might be coming down the pike. You also have the vast majority of the sell-off in the stock market probably due to President Trump's comments over there in London during the NATO meeting, saying that, look, I'm in no hurry to make a trade deal. Of course, we were told back in October, folks, that phase one was complete. It was all but complete. All we were waiting for was the signing ceremony, which was supposed to take place in Chile a few weeks ago in November. That didn't happen because of the riots and the protests taking place in Chile, but there was never anything that was rescheduled. I mean, if they had that date blocked off on their calendar, that being President Xi and President Trump, they could have reconvened somewhere else if that was signed, sealed, just needed to be delivered. That's basically all it was, the signing ceremony. Nope, not happening. We're almost 2 months from that point in October. And now, I'm in no hurry. And in fact, to be honest with you, he says, of course, okay, a little truth maybe. Finally, maybe. To be honest with you, I'd almost hope it would take place after the election next year. Not before, after. At the same time, in this same news conference, basically, Donald Trump makes the claim, look, I don't even pay attention to the stock market. Really? Are you kidding me? Maybe we had a little sense of honesty and then right back to the lies immediately. Can't keep it straight. I don't even pay attention to the stock market. Are you kidding me? On a near daily basis, we talk about the tweets or the comments that are made by him or close allies within his administration talking about this stock market. We've been on a 7-week melt-up with the stock market making almost daily highs on a new all-time highs on a daily basis and Thunder Thumbs is sitting there watching who knows what financial media channel, waiting to tweet to the world. So that's an outright lie, and everybody knows it. He doesn't care. What he says he watches more closely or pays attention to is the jobs. Well, that's going to be interesting because we have a jobs report coming out this Friday for the month of November. And of course, we're going to have revisions for previous months as well. Now, is there going to be a little bit of a boost for holiday shopping, a Santa Claus rally, or is it going to be a stocking full of coal? So we're still in the early throes of December, very much so. So there's a lot to pay attention to, a lot of moving parts. But right now, we have President Trump saying, to be honest with you, I'd prefer if the deal was dealt with after the 2020 election. So we got to wait an entire year before we get a deal. When we were told a month and a half ago, we have one. But not a complete deal, just a phase one deal. Just a phase one deal. And he doesn't pay attention to the stock market. He just pays attention to the jobs number. Well, we're going to see what happens on Friday with, again, November's numbers and revisions from the previous couple months. On top of that, even though he does not pay attention to the stock market, he says the Dow Jones Industrial Average will hit 30,000. He said it. I don't pay attention to it. I don't care about it. But the Dow Jones Industrial Average is going to hit 30,000. I mean, we're at 27,500 now. We were at 28,000 just a few days ago. It could easily get back up there, making its way to 30,000. That's doable, folks. That's doable in a very short period of time. That's only about a 7-8% increase if I'm doing the math in my head correctly, something around that. That's easy. That can be done. I mean, this year we're up about 20-25%. Of course, we were off of very, very lows because of what happened in the fourth quarter of 2018. So the year-over-year comparison makes it easy to do that type of performance. However, only returning maybe 7% next year to get up to 30,000. Who knows? There could be a melt up at the end of this month. Again, the title of this podcast, Santa Claus Rally or Stocking Full of Coal. Time will tell. Time will tell. But if we don't have a trade deal, and if markets aren't going to get accustomed to this, if they're finally going to sink into reality and pay attention to all of the data that we talk about here on a near daily basis, especially with the PMIs, especially what's going on in manufacturing, especially what's going on in the auto sector, globally, mind you, not just here in the United States, but globally, what's going on with the cash freight index, and I'm waiting for that report to come out for the month of November. That'll probably come out probably within the next 2-3 weeks, and I'll do an update on that as well because that continues to show deceleration and stagnation. So it's just not good. And again, the cash freight index is predicting negative GDP print for the fourth quarter. It's not good, folks. This is at a time when we continue to be told by the President of the United States and his administration that this is the greatest economy in the history of the United States. It's a flat-out lie, just like he said that he doesn't pay attention to the stock market. I mean, what a joke. And he says it to your face. He really must think we're all idiots. So that's what's going on there. We're going to have to wait and see what China does. They're going to have to retaliate. Otherwise, they're going to look very, very weak. I don't think that their first retaliation of not allowing the U.S. Navy to port up in Hong Kong Harbor is anything of significance at all, but it was a retaliation, nevertheless, by definition. If they want to play the strongman, they're going to have to up their ante. And again, I don't want that to happen, but this is a trade war, folks, and I told you yesterday, this is what happens. You slap me, I'm going to slap you, I punch you, you punch me, and we just keep escalating until we're both on our knees crying uncle. And then you're both negotiating from a position of weakness. And if you're lucky, you get back to the point where you started. And from what we understand, if there even is a phase one deal, it's only going to take us back to where we were 2 years ago. And not even entirely, because there's still going to be tariffs on the table because you have to have a carrot and stick. There's no way Tariff Man is going to allow the rollback of all of the tariffs. And don't forget, Tariff Man placed tariffs on Argentine and Brazilian steel because, you know, Brazil and Argentina are such economic threats to the United States of America. But why not? And now there's a little bit of a scuffle between President Emmanuel Macron of France and Donald Trump. They, of course, met today in London for the NATO meeting. A little bit of awkward discussion back and forth there. Macron finally seeming to sort of stand up to Donald Trump. A little bit of pushback on what's going on in NATO and some other areas in the Middle East and some other issues. You have France, and we discussed this, I think, maybe a couple months ago when there was some discussion that France might be instituting a digital tax. Well, that could obviously affect U.S. goods, which would be subject to that tax. And I think Donald Trump at the time said, well, no. The French can't do that to the United States. Only I, Donald Trump, can tax American companies. Something to that matter. It sounds like him anyway. And now that is basically being instituted, this digital tax. And now you have Donald Trump threatening more tariffs on France. Okay? About $2.4 billion is what is being thrown out there right now. $2.4 billion worth of goods that will be subject to some sort of tax, whatever tariff man decides. And the bulk of these goods is going to pertain to French wine, cheese, champagne, and some other high-end luxury retailers like Louis Vuitton, Hermes, and a couple others. Maybe some L'Oreal and some other makeup brands as well. So we'll see what happens. We already have the French finance minister coming out and saying, look, if you want to do this, go ahead, but we're going to retaliate. We're already ready for this. We're already ready. We know what you do because you announce everything. You've been doing this. You've been playing this game for 2 years now. We're on to you. We're on to your game. So if you want to play tough, slap the $2.4 billion worth of goods and tariffs on us, but we're going to retaliate. Now, I just said to you guys yesterday, and again, very timely here at the Capitol News. Sometimes it's by luck. Sometimes we just know what we're talking about. But we said yesterday, if Donald Trump is going to go after China, and he has made the claim repeatedly that the European Union is ripping us off even more so than what China is doing, then he has to, by logic, by reason, he has to go after the European Union. And of course, France is a part of the EU. So what's he going to do? Is he going to make good on it? Is he going to say, all right, I got China where I want them. They're struggling. We're now attacking them from the human rights standpoint. If we can get anything done by a bipartisan manner in Congress, it's this. So at least there's some sort of uniform front going after China, at least on human rights. The United States, politically speaking, can get behind that. That's a good thing. I applaud that. And I applaud Donald Trump for signing the Hong Kong bill. And I hope he signs this one against the Chinese Muslims. That's going to put a big pause on these trade talks. At least I would think they would. At least I would think they would. But you never know what's going to happen. Although, if history tells us anything, there's not going to be a trade deal because we've been jerked around for almost 2 years now. But the other thing you have to keep in the front of your mind with all of this is the timing. Here's that word, coincidental. And the reason I bring this up is because next week, ladies and gentlemen, we have our last meeting of the year for the Federal Reserve. The FOMC, the Federal Open Market Committee, meets for the last time, unless there's some sort of emergency meeting. They will meet for the last time next week. So is Donald Trump, tariff man, thunder thumbs, is he trying to get the market to sell off? Because, of course, he doesn't pay attention to it. Is he trying to get the market to sell off to cause panic in the markets, to force the hand of the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates once again? And then if they do so, maybe even if they don't, will he go right back to the narrative of, oh, we're getting close to a deal, short strokes, final laps, millimeters away, we're getting real close. I'm just seconds away from kissing President Xi on the mouth. We're getting that close, love letters, all that stuff. Skipping down the hall, holding hands. I bet that will happen. Or I wouldn't be surprised, let's put it that way, if that happens. Because he's trying to perhaps box in the Federal Reserve. Hey, they got a meeting. He wants to continue to attack the Federal Reserve and Jay Powell, which he did yesterday. We talked about that. He will continue to do so. He will say they have to go lower interest rates. They have to do quantitative easing, which they're already doing. They've already cut interest rates 3 times this year, when last year they were projecting that they were going to increase interest rates. So a huge 180, cut interest rates 3 times, quantitative easing, $60 billion a month, although we're not supposed to call it that, but it is. It's balance sheet expansion. And then you have the overnight repo market, which could go up to $120 billion, and you have a quote-unquote temporary repo market, which goes up to, I think, $75 billion, if I remember my numbers correctly. They're so big, who's really keeping count? But some people are, and good for them. If you follow some people on Twitter, you'll find some of that stuff out there. So the Federal Reserve on a daily, nightly, monthly basis is just throwing tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars at these markets. And they still went down over the past couple of days. They still went down. we are throwing everything and the kitchen sink at these markets. And for the past couple of days, which does not make a trend yet, they have been going down. Now, President Trump, again, getting back to his statement that the Dow Jones Industrial Average will hit 30,000, even though he doesn't pay attention to the stock market, he claims. Again, that's not a far throw from here. It could hit 30,000 by the first quarter. It could do it by the end of this month if you really see a Santa Claus rally. There would have to be a lot of things going right. There would have to be a complete reversal on the trade deal. And both sides would have to have come out and made very, very optimistic and promising comments and positive statements. I don't foresee that happening. You would have to see the Federal Reserve make some really positive comments that the economy has somehow miraculously turned around in the last month. And you would have to see some very, very strong numbers from GDP, which we wouldn't get until the end of January anyway for the fourth quarter of 2019. You'd have to see some fantastic jobs numbers. PMI would have to turn around, although we just got PMI numbers for November. Not good. So I just don't know what is going to propel these markets except more debt, more money printing, and people trying to just, make it happen by the end of the year to get their holiday bonus in the financial markets, try to catch up if they didn't make 20-25% this year just by buying the general market. Who knows what's going to happen? That's why this podcast is Santa Claus Rally or Stocking Full of Coal. It's anybody's guess. It is anybody's guess. You do not know what Donald Trump's going to do. As far as I know, nobody was anticipating that he was going to slap tariffs on Argentina, an economy that's in collapse, and Brazil, an economy that's not in collapse, but it's not fantastic either. So who knows what he's going to do? He was somewhat conciliatory to Emmanuel Macron, which typically is the case with Donald Trump in person with other people, especially if they push back against him, which you don't typically see too often. And ironic that you have a Frenchman sticking up, but whatever. So will Donald Trump, once he gets back home, what is he going to tweet from the Oval Office or wherever he does all of his tweeting from? Is he going to be the tough guy again? Is he going to say, Macron's not going to do that to me? He's not going to make me look like a fool over here. And tariffs on, because now you're going to escalate because we've already been told by the French finance minister that they're going to retaliate. Now, again, there's that threat. If that red line in the sand is crossed, they're going to have to retaliate. Otherwise, they're going to look weak. Again, folks, trade wars do not work. They do not work. You smack me, I smack you. You punch me, I punch you. And it just keeps escalating. That's how they work, and they don't work. You understand what I'm saying? It's not good for anybody. So a lot of things to pay attention to. All of this is interconnected. If this continues to exacerbate this slowdown in global economic growth, well, what do you think is going to happen all over the world, which is already taking place anyway? A lot more protests. A lot more protests. They are not transitory. They are history in the making. So, market performance, a couple down days, does not make a trend. We'll continue to follow it. A lot of this on the back of trade talks with China, trade talks with perhaps the European Union, tariffs on Brazil and Argentine steel and aluminum. The Federal Reserve meeting next week. Is Donald Trump simply trying to box them in so he can blame them for this sell-off, even though it's a lot dealing with the trade talks right now? A lot has to unfold, and a lot is going to unfold over the next few weeks. It's always something. I mean, Donald Trump loves drama, and he's always right in the middle of it. He loves the attention. He loves stirring the pot. He loves causing problems and confusion, and boy, does he have it. We have in the 2020 presidential race, we have Senator Kamala Harris from California suspending her campaign. This is no surprise if you have been following anything in the news, especially here at the Capitol News when we talk about this. Kamala Harris, I don't like the woman, but I've stated from the beginning, I thought she was going to be a formidable candidate, as did a lot of other analysts out there. And my reasoning, I think, was a little bit different from some other analysts out there. I was saying the woman was power hungry, and she just seemed ruthless, that she wouldn't care who she'd have to walk over, step over, throw under the bus, and she was just going to be driven by seeing herself in the Oval Office. And I said that's going to go what I thought was going to be a long way until she started to debate, until she started to campaign. And I said, my goodness, this woman's an even bigger idiot than I had thought she was, because her questioning that you would see in various Senate committees, or her giving speeches on the Senate floor or interviews. Not that impressive. I was never impressed by this woman, but I said, you know what? Being ruthless, being cold like that, at least that's my read and interpretation of her, and being power hungry can get you a long way. Plus, she's an African-American woman. She checks a lot of boxes, politically speaking, especially on the left, which looks for all of those things. You shouldn't look for all of those things like that, but that's what they are. It's identity politics, and she checked off a few boxes for them. So I figured she'd go, a little bit further than what she did. She's not even making it to Iowa. So this just shows that she was way in over her head, is not as smart as she thinks she is, which I knew that. So she's suspending her campaign. Donald Trump, of course, made a note. Too bad, Kamala, and she responded to him, we'll see you at the trial. So that's a good segue for what's going to take place tomorrow. The impeachment inquiry makes its way to the House Judiciary Committee. This is going to be led by Democrat Jerry Nadler, who is a sleazebag, but nevertheless, that's where we find ourselves. Just because this guy's a sleazebag doesn't mean he is incapable of speaking the truth or keeping an orderly process in place, but we'll see what happens. We will see what happens. Keep an open mind. Look for the facts of the matter, because we have the report, the majority report from the Democrats being produced today. It's a 300-page report. Maybe later in the week we'll get through some of this. Basically, they're implicating all the president's men, everybody who has pretty much yet to testify. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, former Secretary of Energy Rick Perry, Acting Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney, VP Mike Pence, John Bolton, former National Security Advisor, and if I'm missing anybody, forgive me, but pretty much all of the president's men, Rudy Giuliani, his personal attorney, they have been implicated. Goes all the way to the top. He is encircled, according to this report. And look, folks, I have stated this consistently. It does not look good for Donald J. Trump. It does not look good at all. So we're going to have to see what happens, keep an open mind, let the facts fall where they may. We should be more focused on the truth and justice as opposed to whether or not this is a Republican that's under fire or a Democrat who's under fire. This is about truth and justice. This is about maintaining the health and stability of our republic, which is under attack, not just from outside forces, because it's always been under attack from outside forces. Any type of empire or major civilization or any type of world superpower, it collapses from within. No external factor other than some sort of cosmic event is going to cause the United States to fail. We are going to cause it to fail. And we are on that path to failure. The collapse of our republic. That's the path that we are on. The divisiveness that exists in this country is toxic. We cannot even agree on facts. If we cannot agree on the facts, we have no foundation. If you have no foundation, it's like building a house of cards on sand. We are doomed to fail. It's just a matter of time. And unfortunately, we have a president of the United States who does not rise above this, like an Abraham Lincoln or one of our founding fathers, somebody like that, with that type of character, to rise above these attacks, to rise above this divisiveness and say, look, we got to stop this. We got to come together. We have to be united as a country. Here's the exculpatory evidence. I told you this is a perfect call. Here's all of the exculpatory evidence that exonerates me and everybody else. Here it is. We got to rise above this. We got to secure our borders. We got to rebuild our infrastructure. We got to invest in X, Y, Z. These are the things we have to do, people. Instead, nope, he gets up there and he campaigns and he gives it right back. He gives it right back. So all that does is it puts the left further into their silo and the right further into theirs, and we are at each other's throats. This is not good for the health of this republic, and it makes us an easier target from outside forces. So you see this type of chaos? This is exactly what Osama bin Laden was looking for, because he knew he could not beat us here on our soil. He had to get us over there. And all the other terrorists, they got to get us over there to extend our supply lines, to lose life and blood, to lose treasure. And my goodness, have we? My goodness, have we lost so much and gained so little? And now you have the likes of Vladimir Putin, who remains in power, who just loves all of this chaos. And he now has a bigger stronghold in Syria, which is what he has been looking to do for years. So this is not good, folks. This is not good at all. And don't forget, and I'm throwing a lot of stuff out there at you, but there's a lot of stuff going on globally, and again, with the global protests. But you still do not have a formal government in Israel right now. You do not. Benjamin Netanyahu could not form a coalition, and the other gentleman, I can't remember his name off the top of my head right now, he couldn't form one either. So you have Benjamin Netanyahu, who is also under investigation, or he's been indicted, so he's under legal pressure over there. And you have them, hurtling back and forth with Gaza, and you have them bombing some places in Syria that have to do with Iran. I mean, what do I tell you, folks? When all else fails, take them to war. So get ready. Anything could happen overnight. You just don't know. That's why you have to stay vigilant. There's a lot of stuff that's going on. So back to the Democrats right now in this impeachment inquiry. There's some other news that came out in this report from the Democrats. Allegedly, Republican Representative Devin Nunes of California, the ranking member on the House Intelligence Committee, who was sitting next to the chairman of the committee, Adam Schiff. Again, Representative Devin Nunes allegedly made some phone calls with Giuliani's associates, the guys who have been arrested by the FBI. In particular, I believe, Lev Parnas, who is the one who wants to sing like a canary, allegedly. How they got these phone calls, I'm uncertain. I don't know if they were subpoenaed. I got to take a bigger look into this report. But all of this stuff is very fluid. A lot of stuff is coming out. We also have in the same report, allegedly there are phone calls between Rudy Giuliani making phone calls with the White House, with several of those phone calls targeted with the OMB, which is the Office of Management and Budget, which again would implicate acting Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney, because he is also the director of OMB. So why is Rudy Giuliani, the personal attorney for Donald J. Trump, the President of the United States, why is he calling and speaking with anybody within the Office of Management and Budget? And presumably that would be Mick Mulvaney. Yeah. What's going on here? How are these phone calls secured? How did the Democrats get their hands on these things? Were they subpoenaed behind the closed doors? What's going on here? Is Devin Nunes going to have to testify now? Is Adam Schiff going to have to testify because he's the one to put this whole thing together? Where's Giuliani? You haven't heard much from him lately. So what's going on here? This is not looking good, which it hasn't from the beginning. So, and I think the Democrats are going to move forward probably on obstruction of justice as well, or obstruction of Congress, for a potential article of impeachment. And despite the fact that this impeachment inquiry is making its way into the House Judiciary Committee, there are members of the House Intelligence Committee who are saying their investigation is ongoing. It's still ongoing, so I don't know what that necessarily means, if they're still getting information, if other people are coming out. But they're going to have to be transparent about this. The Democrats are going to have to be transparent about what's going on here, because if they're not, all it's going to do is make this whole thing look shady. It's going to make it look like a witch hunt, and it's going to feed in right into the narrative of the Republicans and Donald J. Trump. And that doesn't mean that the facts aren't there against Donald Trump, because they are against him, very much so. But this is not a criminal case. At least not now. Who knows what will happen years from now or whatever. But right now, this is a political process. And I think if this was criminal, from what we know right now, he's got a big problem. Now, of course, he is yet to really come forward with his attorneys or with any type of evidence to, exonerate himself or defend himself. So we're going to wait to see what happens on the other side. I want to be as fair as possible. I want all of the facts. We don't have all of the facts, but the facts that we do are not good. And if you think otherwise, I think you're a part of the problem. I really do. I really mean that sincerely, because I think I've done a reasonable job here of calling balls and strikes. And this goes right to the heart of the fact, or the heart of the matter, that I just stated a few moments ago, that if we cannot agree on the facts, then what can we build on? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. So we got poor market performance, U.S.-China trade talks in a state of flux. Kamala Harris suspends her campaign. The Democrats released their 300-page report. This impeachment inquiry makes its way to the House Judiciary Committee tomorrow. There will be testimony. And we have the Federal Reserve meeting next week, and global protests ensue. They are continuing. Santa Claus rally or stocking full of coal. Time will tell, but we're going to know within the next few weeks. Thank you so much for joining me today, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a pleasure having you as always. Please like, share, subscribe, get the word out, and do leave your comments. We love hearing from you. Stay diversified, stay vigilant, and stay with the Capital News. I am Alex Corritis. Godspeed.